this panel is going to be the death of your PC because of the thermals that, oh sh**. All right, so the NZXT H510. Most people know this case, and most people know this case for all the hate it gets on this solid front panel. As all the critics say, your PC is going to die because this panel is going to affect system temps that much. Not actually true, but NZXT has heard your criticism, internet, and now you can opt for one with the mesh front instead. If you're already familiar with the H510, there's actually very little new here for you. The story really is the H510 got a mesh front. That said, you will get to see this a little more up close and personal as we go through our tour, and I am going to do the full tour as I normally do with cases because I think that the H510 in general appeals to a lot of newer builders, and this may be the first case that someone builds in. So I want to show everybody what it's like to build in this case and how things install in it. All right, so let's start with specs. Now, as I just said, the NZXT H510 Flow Edition is pretty much the H510 Standard Edition with a mesh front. So accordingly, its dimensions are exactly the same. You're looking at a case that's running 428 millimeters in depth by 210 millimeters in width by 460 millimeters in height. In freedom units, that would be about 16.9 inches depth by 8.3 inches width and 18.1 inches in height. This case supports ATX, micro ATX, and mini ITX motherboards. And a nice detail about this case is that NZXT has included two fans. They're 120 millimeters in size. On our sample unit here, we've got them mounted one at the front and one at the back. But what you should know about the front is that it can actually support 140 millimeter fans too. So if you wanted to replace that fan with a larger one, you can. So the front here can do either two 120 millimeter fans or two 140 millimeter fans. And then for the rest of the case, you can do either a 120 or 140 millimeter fan at the top. And then at the back, you can only do a single 120 millimeter fan. For rad sizes, you can do either up to a 240 millimeter rad or up to a 280 millimeter rad at the front. And then you can also do a single 120 millimeter rad at the back. You cannot do one at the top, there's not enough clearance. Speaking of clearances, for CPU clearance, so if you're doing an air cooler for your CPU, so the amount of room you have from the motherboard out to the glass for clearance is 165 millimeters. And then for a GPU, the amount of length you have here for clearance is 381 millimeters. And then for radiator clearances, you have up to 60 millimeters for clearance here at the front and the rear. And then finally, you can't see it right now, we'll show it to you in just a moment, but on this side of the case is where you would put your power supply, down here in the shroud area. And there's no official measurement that was given for clearances, and that's partially, I think, because you can move the hard drive cage. I took a manual measurement for you all with a tape measure, and so if you have the hard drive cage pushed as far back as it can go, you get about 250 millimeters of a length here. Now, that's not only for your power supply. This is the total amount of space you're gonna have for your power supply and whatever cables that you have in the case with it. And then for number of drives, and again, you'll be able to see this when we open this case up for you. For number of drives, you can do up to 3 mounting spots for 2.5 inch drives and also up to 3 mounting spots for 3.5 inch drives. It's a little weird to put it that way because you can actually do a maximum of 5 drives in this case depending on what sizes you populate in various spots. But just know that that maximum of 3 is specific to those sizes. You can only do up to 3, 2.5 or 3.5 inch drives, wherever in the case, and then whatever else you populate will dictate how many total you have overall. And then finally, last bit of specs for you is that we've got two dust filters in this case. They're both removable. One is here at the front on the underside, or sorry, the back side of this metal mesh panel. And then there's one on the underside of the case as well to protect, your power supply's intake fan from, sucking in a ton of dust and pet fur. All right, so we're going to look at the exterior of the case next. And first up is the I/O ports here at the front. On the H510, you're going to get a combination audio jack, a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C port, a single USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-A port, and a power button with an LED ring around it. As for the case itself, it's made out of steel and obviously this one tempered glass side panel. And at the back here, there's one little feature that I want to show to our newer builders, and that is these panels are secured with captive thumb screws. And what that means is that when you loosen the screws enough to pull off the panels, that's it. You don't have to actually pull the entire screw out. And because they're captive, they stay with the panel and you don't have to worry about keeping track of them while you're building. So like one really nice small quality of life thing. All right, so I've actually loosened those captive thumb screws I was just talking about. And now I'm going to show you how these panels come off. So for the tempered glass side, you have the single captive screw here, and then you have to give it a light tug to pop out these knobs from the chassis itself. Let me spin that around for you so you can see that. So these go right in here. And the reason this is set up this way, and it's a nice detail on NZXT's part, obviously, they want to keep you from having the glass just going like, and then shattering potentially on your floor after you loosen the thumb screw. So this way it stays secure even after the screw is loose. In contrast, and because you don't have to worry about this on the other side, this side simply just slides straight off. So that's loose. You can kind of pull it out a little bit and then just give it a little bit of a tug. And there you go. Comes off real nice and easy. As for the front, it's toolless. I looked at the manual actually, and it looked like there were supposed to be like screws holding it in place, but on our sample unit, it's toolless. You just give it a little tug and it comes right off. So again, you've got that peg system where you have a little bit of resistance that's holding it in. So you just give it a little light tug and it comes off real nice and easy. And actually, before I take this away out of view, here's that dust filter I was talking about. It is removable. And what you want to do is, I get enough room here, get your finger in there, tug it out just a little bit, and then you can slide it right out. And this one's nice because it's a nice fine nylon mesh. I'm a big fan of removable dust filters because you can take it out, rinse it, let it dry, and because these are plastic and mesh, you don't really have to worry about, rusting or like scuffing the paint like you would on the metal mesh part here. The other dust filter, let me show you that while we're talking about the dust filters, is here at the bottom. And this one you just tug down or push down a little bit to get the little release here free. And then you slide it right on out. And again, you've got that nice nylon mesh, and give that a rinse whenever it gets, clogged up, gunked up with all your favorite pet fur and dust in the house. And the last thing for the exterior of the case that I want to show you are the feet. We get this question sometimes. Yes, these feet should be removable. There's a screw that you would undo to get them loose. The thing is, though, you will have to peel off these rubber feet first. So these rubber pads right here are adhesive. I'm not really going to do it because I've always found that when I peel off adhesive, it never really goes back on the same way. But these do peel off, and you should be able to get access to the screw underneath there. All right, let's look at the inside of the case now. I'll start with fan mounting spots. So just to reiterate, that's the top here. the rear, and then you've got 2 spots here at the front. And as a reminder, you can do either 120 or 140 millimeter fans at the front. The included fan is 120 millimeters in size. If you wanted to, you can replace it with a 140, and for newer builders, the reason why you might want to do that is that a larger fan has a benefit of being quieter because you can move the same amount of air at a slower RPM. For radiators, again, you can do one at the back here, 120 millimeter size, or a radiator here at the front, either, all the way up to 240 or 280 millimeters in size. And the way you'd mount that is on this bracket here. So let me pull it off real quick to show you what it looks like. And again, these were captive screws, which again is a nice little quality of life touch there. The cable is, let me see if I get some slack there. There we go. Okay, so with the fan mounted on here, I can't pull the bracket out quite as far as I would like because the cable on it limits my range of motion. But this bracket comes off, and this is a nice touch because it makes it easier to install fans and or a radiator. You can pull it out entirely, mount it separately on your table, and then just put the whole thing back in here and mount it as a single unit this way. That way you're not fiddling with like limited amount of space while you're putting in the screws and all of that. All right, so let me spin this around. First, we're going to talk about how to take out this cable bar if you don't want it there, or you need to take it out because it's in the way as you're routing your cables. So this thing actually mounts with 5 screws. You've got, let's see, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you take all of those out, and then you can just pull that bar right out. And then for cable routing spots, obviously you've got this routing channel guide right here. And then I forgot to point this out on the other side, so let me spin this back around real quick. But you can also use these cutouts as well. And then this is also here because, great segue, right? There are storage mounting brackets here for 2.5 inch drives. And these are actually removable, and you can take these and place them right on top here on the grill, wherever you please. And so I think depending on where you place it, this can be a better cable routing spot for you than the 2 back here. Speaking of those storage mounting spots, let's go over the whole set of them. So you've got the 2 here, which again, as I just mentioned, can be moved to the front or the other side if you like. And then, let me move this out of the way. And then you've got the hard drive cage down here. Now the hard drive cage can handle up to 3 3.5 inch drives. We've got the accessories box here standing in for, the spot, one of the spots. And pull that out. So 2 here, 1 here, and then the cage itself is fully removable and also repositionable here in the case. So you can move it down here further back if you need a little extra room at the front. If you pull out that cage, you can mount a single drive to the bottom here. And that's one spot for either mounting a 3.5 inch drive or a 2.5 inch drive. And that way, I guess you can have a little extra space on top over it for whatever extra cables or whatnot you might want to put there. All right, so speaking of the accessories box, I'm just going to open this up real quick for you all to show you what's inside and also point out a couple things of note. So what you get inside the box is the manual, and this actually tells you, what fits where and how to install things. It's useful to look at. I'm a big fan of reading the manual. And then this bag has all the cable ties and screws that you'll need with this case. And one thing that NZXT does that I really like is that they individually bag and label all the different types of screws that you get. The 2 things I really want to point out here, though, I took a sneak peek, so this is not new to me, is well, maybe 3 actually, because 1, here is a headset jack splitter, so that if you don't have a combination type jack on your headset and you have like separate plugs, this will make that compatible. You don't have to go out and buy an extra adapter. Actually, you know what? I misspoke. It's actually two, but this is a third thing I do want to point out. So two cool things and one third thing for people who have a sad, I guess, motherboard. And what I mean by that is, so I gotta open this up for y'all. So NZXT does kind of a cool thing, and its front panel pins, instead of having to deal with all, you know, all the typical individual ones that you have to like squint and like figure out where it goes on your motherboard because it's not standard. I know a lot of people say that, oh, it's all standardized now, you should just know where it goes. That's not actually true. It's sad but true that it is not the case. NZXT has a single header, so you just go boop, and it should work in theory. But if your motherboard is not down with that, this allows you to go back to the individual method to make sure you're actually connecting it to the right spots. So not a happy thing, but that's just also a noteworthy thing for anybody building out there who's not as familiar with all of that. The actual second cool thing is that they include a little standoff adapter. And what I mean by this is sometimes you have to reposition the motherboard. Let me just spin this around for you. Sometimes you have to reposition the motherboard standoffs in the case because they're just not lined up properly with where your motherboard's holes are. And it's important that you do that, obviously, because if a standoff's in the wrong spot and it touches, I think, one of the traces on the back of the motherboard, it can cause a short. You don't want to short your motherboard. It's bad for it. It's bad for your PC in general, for it working, right? So, oh, sorry. I don't know why I'm flipping this around. So this little doohickey is nice because to make sure also that you don't have a motherboard standoff that's too loose and then it starts spinning underneath your motherboard, because you, instead of unscrewing your motherboard when it comes time to like service it or change it or reposition it, and you go to unscrew it and the standoff starts coming out from the case itself instead of the screw coming out from the standoff. It usually happens when the standoff's not tight enough. You can make sure that your standoffs are tight enough when you manually reposition them by putting this little thing over it, and that gives you the ability to use a standard screwdriver and make sure that it's tightened down enough, because doing it by hand is rarely, maybe never tight enough. All right, so the final thing I'm doing here for you all is I'm just going to show you what it looks like to have a couple of different components populating their normal spots. This one is for everybody like me who has a hard time visualizing what it really looks like when, say, your graphics card is 270 millimeters in length, but you have up to 381 millimeters of clearance and how much space that really takes. So this one's for you if you're like me. What we've got here is a Founders Edition version of the GeForce GTX 1080, which is a card that is actually about 270 millimeters in length. And that's about how much space it's going to take out of your 381 millimeters of clearance in this case. It will clear. If you have a longer card, the cable bar could interfere. So again, if you need to remove it, you can. You just gotta take out those 5 screws. Otherwise, I think for this one, it definitely clears. And I think for others, you may be okay as well, depending. We'll just have to see how it goes when you put your card in. Another thing I want to show you while we're on this side of the case is what it looks like to have one of those 2.5-inch drive storage mounting brackets placed on top of the grill here on the power supply shroud. So the way this works is that you just unscrew a single, you loosen and remove a single screw, and then you just, press on this and it frees it from the back here, and then you can move one or both of these to the front. And really you can put it pretty much anywhere on this grill that you want. And once you just get into a spot that you like, you just press down. It should snap into place and be secure. One small tip that I like to do, and maybe helpful for you too if you're a newer builder, is that if you do remove that screw, you can just put it right back in that same spot to keep track of it. Obviously, you can put it back in the accessories box, but I like to do that so that if I need to move things around, I have it right at my fingertips and I don't have to go hunting for the bag and, you know, the particular screw that I need. Speaking of screws, actually, for this PCIe slot cover right here that goes, let's see, it goes over this way, I believe. I can't see very well, sorry. Maybe it's this way, probably it's this way, yeah. But anyway, the two screws that hold this in place are thumb screws, but unlike the rest of the case that I was, you know, going on about earlier, these are not captive, so you will have to unscrew these fully to get this plate off. As far as I can tell, that's the only set of screws in the case like that. I'm going to flip to the other side now and show you what it looks like to have a power supply in this section here. Now what I've got is a lower wattage power supply. So it's a 500 watt power supply. It's a little smaller, it's non-modular, so I've got all the cables in there with it. This is 140 millimeters in length. And again, when you measure up to about here, which is the furthest back that the hard drive cage can go, you get 250 millimeters of space to work with. Right now, the hard drive cage is actually pushed all the way forward. So I actually have another, maybe another centimeter and a half, like 15 millimeters of extra clearance here. Obviously, that's more than enough room for everything that I've got in here. And you know, not all these cables are going to be stuffed in here anyway when you actually route them to the motherboard. But you can still use this as a visual for your power supply and whatever cables you're going to be putting in here, and you know, ballpark how much space you're going to have. So that does it for our look at the H510 Flow Edition. As for colors, price, and availability, this case comes in two colors, black and this kind of white and black edition. I like to call this Stormtrooper white. Costs $75 US, according to NZXT, and NZXT also says that the estimated availability will be October 18th. I wouldn't put your hopes too much on that 18th as a dead set date, just because, you know, right now with the world being as crazy as it is, shipping times can get delayed or it gets a little wonky. But if you're interested in this case, start looking for it about the 18th. One thing to note about this case, no build notes for me, but I will say that if you're considering this case, you should also probably look at the Montech X3, which is a very similar style. It's a little bit shorter and a little bit taller, but roughly the same size, a little busier on the front, so not quite as minimalistic. But if you're a value builder and you're looking for something like this in that $70 price range, the X3 is $70, so $5 cheaper than this one's MSRP, and it comes with six RGB fans. And if you like aesthetics, if you like that bling bling, glow glow, it's gonna be really hard to beat that, because this case comes with two fans and they're non-RGB. So if you're into that, take a look at that. Otherwise, I do think that this case is loved for a good reason. It's very popular for a good reason. It's clean, easy to build in, has that minimalist look. And now the biggest complaint about it has been addressed. It no longer has, this version no longer has that solid panel. You've got mesh front for better airflow. That does it for this one. As always, if you have comments or questions, leave them below. And if you like this video, please give a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel for more PC hardware and just general PC coverage. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next one.